Eryndor, a bard in a world where music is magic, discovers fragments of a legendary melody, the forgotten tune, said to bend kings' wills. It grants immense power, but exacts a deadly toll on its player. Obsessed, Eryndor pursues the tune, despite warnings from Leora, his steadfast ally, and Meles, a mysterious seer. As rivals, courts, and even his estranged sister seek control of the song, Eryndor struggles with ambition, betrayal, and the tune's curse. His journey becomes a battle between creation and ruin, forcing him to choose, master the song or be consumed by it. The sun had barely crested the jagged horizon when I found myself strumming my lute amidst the cacophony of the market. The air was thick with the mingled scents of fresh-baked bread, ripe fruit, and the temps of the nearby river. Vendors hawked their wares with boisterous calls, while children darted between carts, their laughter ringing like bells. I was Eryndor, a bard among many, but with dreams that stretched far beyond the well-trodden paths of this bustling town. Music was magic here, not just a pastime, but the very breath of our world, and I had spent years chasing melodies lost to time. That day, as my fingers danced over strings, weaving a tune that coaxed smiles and coins, a strange stillness fell over the crowd. From the edges of the square, an old man approached, his robes faded and threadbare eyes sharp as a hawk's. He paused before me, his gaze intense, and without a word, pressed a parchment into my palm. The paper was ancient, its edges frayed, and across it scrawled notes of a melody I had never seen, fragmented, haunting. Whispers followed in his wake tales of a forgotten tune that could bend kings to a bard's will. Power that was intoxicating, yes, but laced with peril. Elders warned of its curse, the deadly toll it exacted from those who dared play it. Yet, as I held that fragile sheet, a fire ignited within me. What was the price of a song that could shape fate itself? That evening, in the solitude of my cramped room lit by flickering candlelight, I traced the notes with trembling fingers. The melody whispered secrets in a language lost to memory, ancient harmonies humming beneath the surface. A shiver ran down my spine, both fear and fascination. Leora found me there, her tall frame silhouetted in the doorway. Her eyes, fierce yet full of warmth, met mine. "Eryndor," she said quietly, "some songs are best left unsung. This path you choose. It is dark and winding, but I could not turn away." The forgotten tune called to me, promising dominion and dread in equal measure. I was a bard, yes, but now I was something Moran, eager, seeker of a power long buried, and perhaps a man walking toward his own ruin. As the night deepened, the melody became my companion, its notes weaving through my dreams and waking thoughts alike. Each whisper of its tune was a step deeper into a world where music was not mere magic, but a force that could command kingdoms, alter destinies, and bind souls. I was ready to learn its secrets, no matter the cost. For in that forgotten tune lay the promise of a fate harmonized with meaner melody that might yet rewrite. The story of a bard who dared to sing beyond the edges of time. But as any bard worth their salt knows, every song has its price, and every note a shadow lurking beneath its beauty. I had heard the warnings, seen the flicker of fear in the eyes of those who knew. Now I would play the first chords, stepping into a dance of power and peril from which there was no turning back. So begins my tale, the story of a bard named Eryndor, a melody lost to the ages, and a world where music is magic's heartbeat. The forgotten tune awaits, and with it, a destiny that sings both promise and doom. The candle's flame wavered as I leaned closer to the ancient manuscript, its brittle pages whispering secrets of a time long lost. The dim chamber smelled of dust and forgotten memories, but my fingers trembled with the thrill of discovery. Here, in the faded notations and cryptic symbols, lay the fragments of the forgotten tune, the very melody that had haunted my dreams and driven my ambition. I traced the delicate lines of the musical script, feeling a subtle warmth beneath my fingertips, as if the parchment itself pulsed with latent energy. The lost language embedded within the tune was unlike any I had encountered, its harmonies weaving patterns that seemed to resonate not only in the ear but deep within the soul. The notes carried a power both beautiful and terrifying, a force that had once shaped kingdoms and bent wills. Driven by a mix of curiosity and obsession, I retrieved my lute and began to play. The first tentative strums were uncertain, yet as the melody evolved, a chilling magic stirred in the air around me. The room seemed to vibrate with an unseen force, the very fabric of reality humming in response to the tune. I felt a spark ignite within me, an intoxicating surge of power that whispered promises of dominion and influence. But with that power came an insidious toll. A creeping weariness settled into my bones, heavy and unyielding. My fingers grew numb, my breath shortened, and an ache spread through my chest that no melody could soothe. The magic was intoxicating, yes, but it was also draining me, twisting my body into a fragile vessel barely able to contain the force I sought to command. Leora's sharp voice broke through my reverie as she entered the chamber, her keen green eyes narrowing as she took in my pallid face and trembling hands. "Eryndor," she said, her tone both stern and tender, "you push yourself too hard. This tunit is not just music. It is a burden, a curse." I wanted to protest, to tell her I could control it, that the power was worth the price. Yet as I met her concerned gaze, I knew she was right. The melody was changing me, pulling me deeper into a realm where music was magic and magic was peril. That night, as shadows danced on the walls and silence wrapped the world in its embrace, a faint knock echoed at the door. I opened it to find Maylis standing there, her silver hair glowing softly like starlight. Her eyes, shimmering with ancient wisdom, held a depth that unsettled and comforted me in equal measure. "The tune you chase," she murmured, "is woven from the lost language of a civilization swallowed by its own ambition. Each note carries a fragment of their fate, a warning and a curse. You must learn its true meaning, or the melody will consume you as it did them." Her words hung in the air, a cryptic riddle that only deepened my resolve. I had glimpsed the power within the forgotten tune, tasted its seductive promise. But now, confronted with the shadows of its past, I faced a choice: to continue chasing the melody's whispers, or to heed the warnings and turn away before it was too late. Still, the music called to me, a haunting refrain that would not be silenced. And so, I played on, each note a step deeper into the mystery, each breath a fragile thread binding me to a fate I could neither escape nor fully understand. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, I closed the manuscript once more, the melody echoing softly in my mind. The power was there, undeniable and potent, but so was the price. And with every note I learned, the weight of that price pressed heavier on my soul. Would I be the master of the forgotten tune, or its next victim? The answer lay hidden in the music's shadows, waiting for me to find it or be lost forever. The chamber was small, cramped between sagging walls that whispered of age and secrets long kept. A single candle flickered on a rickety table, casting dancing shadows that seemed to mimic the tremulous notes spilling from my lute. My fingers ached fiercely, crawling numbness creeping up as I struggled to command the melody, the forgotten tune that both enthralled and destroyed me. Each note struck was a battle waged against my own frailty. The air grew thick with a strange, almost tangible energy, a shimmering current that wrapped itself around my bones and whispered promises of dominion. But with every strain of the melody, my breath shortened, heart pounding against ribs that felt too brittle to hold it. I paused, hands trembling, the lutes would cold beneath my fingers. The silence that stretched was heavy, oppressive, broken only by the faint rustle of cloth as I leaned back against the rough stone wall. The ancient song had begun as a whisper in my mind, a fragment unearthed from faded manuscripts and half-forgotten lore. Now it was a living thing, a serpent coiled in my veins, beautiful and deadly. A soft knock at the door startled me. Leora's familiar silhouette slipped inside, her presence a balm against the creeping darkness. Her keen green eyes searched my face, taking in the pallor and the subtle tremor in my hands. "Eryndor," she said quietly, stepping forward, "you push yourself too far. This tune, it's draining you." I forced a smile, though it faltered under her steady gaze. "It is the price of power, Leora. Without risk, there is no reward." Her brows knit together, the protective fire in her eyes unyielding. "And what use is power if it kills the wielder? I will not let you fall to this curse alone." Her words settled in the room like a solemn vow. I wanted to believe it was enough. Over the following days, the tune consumed more of me. Practice sessions stretched long into the night, each repetition carving deeper lines of exhaustion into my face. My fingers, once nimble and sure, now faltered with numbing cold. Yet the melody grew stronger, its magic weaving subtle threads of influence around those who heard it, bending wills and shifting fates. In the quiet moments, Leora was my anchor. She tended to my weakening frame, her hands steady and sure as she wrapped bandages around my wrists or offered me warm broth. Our conversations were sparse but laden with meaning. "You must learn to listen to your body," she warned one evening, her voice low and steady. "This song is not just music, it is a bond, a pact with something ancient and unforgiving." I nodded, the truth in her words undeniable. Each performance was a step closer to oblivion, yet the lure of the tune's power was intoxicating. It promised a way to bring order to the chaos that had shattered my past, to mold fate itself as if it were clay beneath my fingers. But at what cost? One night, as the wind howled softly outside and the candle's flame flickered in protest of the chill, I played the tune again. The notes spilled forth, weaving a tapestry of sound that shimmered with lost languages and ancient harmonies. My breath came in ragged gasps, limbs trembling violently, but I pressed on, driven by a desperation I could scarcely name. When the last note faded into silence, I collapsed against the cold stone floor, vision blurring. Leora was at my side in an instant, her arms steadying me, her voice a lifeline. "You promised to be careful," she said, though her words were laced with fear. I met her gaze, a hollow echo of the man I once was, reflected back. "I promise to protect this melody, but I fear it will be my undoing." She squeezed my hand, fierce and unyielding. "Then we face whatever comes together." In that moment, a fragile alliance was forged between a bard and a warrior, between power and survival. The forgotten tune was no longer just a secret song. It was a burden shared, a deadly dance we both would endure. As the candle guttered and died, I understood that the path ahead was shadowed and uncertain. The melody promised dominion, yes, but its price was a slow unraveling of the self. And still, I could not turn away. Not yet. The night stretched long and cold, but within me, The haunting refrain played a reminder that some songs, no matter how beautiful, demand a toll that cannot be ignored. And so, the journey continued, one fragile note at a time. The grand hall of Lord Velric's estate was alive with the low murmur of noble voices, the scent of spiced wine, and the flickering glow of oil lamps casting dancing shadows upon the stone walls. I stood at the edge of the polished floor, my lute cradled like a fragile heart, the weight of the forgotten tune pressing against my ribs like a secret too heavy to bear. The chatter dimmed as the minor lord himself entered, his sharp eyes scanning the room with the practiced caution of a man who had lived long enough to distrust both friend and foe. I took a deep breath, the air thick with expectation and the faintest trace of unease. Fingers poised above the strings, I let the first note spill forth delicate, haunting, and utterly foreign to all but me. The melody unfurled like a ghostly mist, wrapping itself around the assembled guests, tugging at invisible threads woven into the fabric of their minds. I could feel it, the pulse of power humming beneath my fingertips, a fragile, potent thing that demanded reverence and caution. Lord Velric's gaze locked onto mine, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as he felt the melody reach into him, stirring thoughts and feelings he could neither explain nor resist. His posture softened imperceptibly. The rigid line of command in his shoulders slackened, as if the music had whispered a command only he could hear. The room held its breath, the nobles frozen in a tableau of shock and curiosity. It was then that I realized the true gravity of the forgotten tune. This was no mere song for amusement or comfort. It was a weapon, a thread that could bind kings and commoners alike to my will. But as the final notes trembled into silence, a cold wave of exhaustion swept through me, my fingers numb and my breath shallow. The cost was already manifesting, an invisible tax paid in fleeting vitality. Leora stood nearby, her keen green eyes scanning the room, alert for threats even as the crowd buzzed with whispered speculation. When our eyes met, she gave a subtle nod, her expression a mixture of pride and warning. "This will mark you," she said quietly. "Not all will welcome such power, and not all will wait patiently." The whispers began even before I left the hall. Rumors, half-formed and eager, spread like wildfire through the city's winding streets. The tune's existence was no longer my secret. Rival factions, hungry for influence, and agents of King Maldron whose shadow now stretched long across the land would soon converge upon me. The weight of the melody's promise pressed heavier than ever. That night, as I walked beneath the pale gaze of the moon, the tune hummed softly in my mind, a siren's call promising dominion and doom intertwined. The song was a living thing, demanding sacrifice and loyalty, and I was caught in its deadly dance. With each step, the path ahead grew darker, but I could not turn away. The melody had chosen me, and I was bound to play it, for better or worse. I touched my lute nervously, the wood warm beneath my fingers, and whispered the fragments of the tune once more. It was a melody lost to time, yet alive within me, a forgotten song that could bend kings to my will, but at the cost of my very soul. The court of shadows awaited, and I was both its prisoner and its master, and so the game began. The flickering lamps inside the estate cast elongated shadows that wavered like ghosts against the rough stone walls. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meats and heady perfumes, but beneath it all lay a tension that prickled my skin. Eyes followed me as I moved to the center of the room, the murmurs swelling into a hush. The nobles around me were clad in silks and velvets, their jeweled clasps and ornate embroidery marking them as men and women of influence and potential danger. I lifted my lute, fingers steady despite the storm inside. The forgotten tune was more than notes. It was a language of power, an ancient magic woven into sound. As I played, the melody's subtle harmonies slid through the hall like a gentle current, unseen but deeply felt. I could see the change flicker across faces, the minor lord's jaw unclenching, his eyes softening, the rigid lines of his posture melting away. It was intoxicating. The first time I felt the tune's command take hold. Bending a will so firmly entrenched in pride and power, I knew I was touching something extraordinary and terrible. The applause that followed was polite but edged with awe, the nobles exchanging glances that spoke of whispered rumors and unspoken fears. Later, in a quiet corner shadowed from prying eyes, Leora approached. Her auburn hair caught the light like fire, her green eyes sharp and wary. "You've stirred a hornet's nest," she said softly. "Spies and rivals will swarm. You must be vigilant." I nodded, the truth settling heavy in my chest. The melody was a double-edged sword, each note a step closer to power, each performance a toll on my body and soul. The path ahead was shrouded in shadows, and I was alone in the center of the storm. The forgotten tune, a haunting refrain that would not let me rest. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, the city's sounds faded into a distant murmur. The stars above were cold and distant, indifferent witnesses to the fragile balance I now held. The melody whispered beneath my breath, a promise and a warning intertwined, power at a price, dominion at the edge of ruin. And Eryndor, bard and bearer of a lost song, was caught in its deadly dance. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss as twilight settled over the ancient forest. I had been wandering aimlessly for hours, the fragments of the forgotten tune swirling in my mind like restless spirits, when she appeared malleus, as if conjured from the very shadows. Her silver hair caught the last glimmers of fading light, shimmering softly, and her eyes held the depth of starlit skies, both distant and piercing. "You seek answers," she said, her voice a melody of its own, light yet weighted with unseen burdens. "But not all answers bring solace." I nodded, the unease inside me growing with every note I played. The tune that had once seemed a promise of power now whispered of ruin. She beckoned me to follow her deeper into the woods, where the trees arched like vaulted ceilings of a forgotten cathedral. We arrived at a clearing where worn stones jutted from the ground, etched with faded runes that pulsed faintly beneath Malice's touch. "These stones," she murmured, "are remnants of a people who danced too close to the song's flame." Their melody was a language lost to time, a harmony that bound their fates, their very souls. I traced the carvings with trembling fingers, sensing a resonance that echoed the tune's motifs. "What happened to them?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. Malus's gaze darkened. Their ambition wove a tapestry of power and sacrifice, but the threads unraveled. The music they crafted was both creation and cursor, melody that demanded a relentless toll. They sought dominion, but the song devoured them, turning harmony into silence. Her words stirred a tempest in my chest. This was no mere legend. It was a dire warning inscribed in the very fabric of the tune I had made my own. In the quiet that followed, the faintest strains of the forgotten melody drifted through the trees, a haunting refrain that seemed to mourn its lost creators. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of history pressing down, the melody's power thrumming beneath my skin, both a gift and a guillotine. "You must choose," Maelys intoned, "to be the song's master or its sacrifice. But heed this, the language of the vanished is delicate, fragile as a whispered promise. To wield it without reverence is to invite oblivion. Her cryptic words lingered in the cool night air as I grappled with the burgeoning dread and fascination that gripped me. The forgotten tune was no simple magic. It was a living, breathing force that bound fate and will, melody and ruin. Back in the solitude of my chamber, I measured each note with newfound caution, the shadows cast by flickering candlelight dancing like ghosts on the walls. The tune's secret language teased the edges of my understanding, a puzzle woven in harmonies and silences. Sleep eluded me, replaced by visions of a civilization consumed by its own song. Their final lament, a testament to the perilous dance between creation and destruction. The melody promised dominion, yet demanded sacrifice, a bitter refrain that echoed through time, binding me to a fate I was only beginning to comprehend. As dawn broke, the forest outside stirred with the song of birds, a fragile counterpoint to the haunting echoes within me. I was no longer just a bard chasing a forgotten tune. I was a keeper of its legacy, burdened with the knowledge that to wield such power was to walk a razor's edge between salvation and ruin. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with shadows and whispers. Yet, beneath the weight of fear, a flicker of resolve kindled within me. I would uncover the full truth of the vanished, decipher the lost language embedded in the melody, and face whatever price awaited. For in the heart of the forgotten tune lay a secret that could reshape the world or doom it. And so, with Melis's cryptic guidance echoing in my mind, I prepared to delve deeper into the melody's dark heart, knowing that each note played drew me closer to a destiny entwined with the haunting echoes of the vanished. But the question that haunted me most was not what I could gain, but what I would lose, and whether the music would silence me forever. The melody was no longer just a song. It was a summons, a call to face the shadows of history and the harmonized fate awaiting me, and I could not turn away.